I woke up from my own scream, but the scream didn't come from my body. My name is Anna. I thought I knew every inch of my apartment, until that night when the mirror decided to tell its version of the truth. First came the sound. At exactly 3:13 a.m., something light knocked from inside the closet, not loudly, but with a steady, deliberate frequency, as if someone were counting. I didn't open it. I listened as the knocking stopped, just as I stopped holding my breath. In the morning, the hanger I had hung up yesterday was lying in the shadow of the closet. No one had entered. No one had left. That night, I found an old recording on my phone. A recording with no date, no name. There was only my apartment, my armchair, and me, clean, asleep, breathing evenly. Suddenly, the camera shook. I got up, walked over to the mirror, and started looking into it, whispering something. I heard my own words in the recording, and there was no me in those words. They were flat, like a sentence. The voice repeated one word: open. I was sure it was someone's joke. But the next night at 3:13 a.m., I woke up again. This time, I couldn't tell who woke up, me or someone pretending to be me. Under the sofa lay a piece of stale bread that I hadn't bought. There was an empty mug in the kitchen, still hot. On the mirror, there were fingerprints pressed against the glass, as if someone was reaching through it. I started installing cameras. I thought, I'll record it. I'll see it. I'll understand. The cameras only showed what I already knew. At 3:13 a.m., my phone was on the nightstand. I was asleep, and the room was dark. But at exactly 3:13 a.m., the voice in the room changed. I heard a whisper that was neither mine nor someone else's. It was thinner, as if two voices were speaking in one. In the low-resolution video, a shadow appeared in the frame near the mirror. It stretched, broke, and when the mirror shook from a light tap, the reflection became asymmetrical. My reflection raised its hand later than I did, and smiled when my face remained blank. I decided to destroy the mirror. The coastline of my mind whispered, "Destroy it, and everything will disappear." I went to the store, bought a sledgehammer, and its weight in my hand felt like medicine. When I returned, I set my phone to record and raised the sledgehammer. I thought about terrible, seemingly final things, about the beginning of the end. But when I hit the glass, the sound didn't shatter. It swallowed the sledgehammer, as if the glass had the density of water. In the reflection, I stood further away from it, leaning calmly on the table. On the other side, my copy slowly raised her finger to her lips. And at that very moment, the voice in the room stopped, as if someone were holding a tiny string in their hand. I didn't sleep for the next 2 days. I ate on the run, saying words I didn't feel. Friends called and asked why I had stopped answering simple questions. I said everything was fine, and the voice inside the mirror repeated, "Okay." On the 7th day, I found a small paper card in my mailbox, with only one sentence written on it: "Open the door when she smiles." There was no signature. My heart skipped a beat, not from fear, but from recognition. I remembered writing something similar myself as a child, playing door games, where the next room was just a step away from reality. But I didn't remember when or why I had put it in the mailbox. The nights intensified. I began to see details that weren't there yesterday. Old framed photographs bustled about as if new people had appeared in them. The flowers on the windowsill were yellow one morning and black the next. Music I hadn't turned on played softly from the ventilation system. One evening, as the lights went out and the city outside the window fell silent, I heard a woman's laughter on the other side of the glass. Not mine, not someone else's. Deep, like a vintage record. In the reflection, I noticed a door that had never existed in my room, small, wooden, with a rusty lock. The door that wasn't behind me now stood next to the mirror, and a faint light emanated from under it. I tried not to look. I walked around the apartment, closed my eyes, read and wrote meaningless notes, just so I wouldn't hear the knocking in the closet and the whispering behind the glass. But that night, the voice in my head uttered a phrase that was familiar to the point of making me tremble. "If you leave, we'll remain friends." I knew it wasn't a suggestion. It was a condition. I opened the door to the mirrored room and walked through the glass as if through thin water. The world behind it was similar, but not quite the same. The colors were deeper, the smells were stronger, and things were arranged differently. There, in the dim light, stood me, but not the me who usually wakes up. She took off her coat, smiled slowly, and imagined a world in which she was the one who had everything. A job, respect, a warm hand nearby. She said, "Everything is different here. You come to me sometimes when you forget, and I come here to be the person I didn't become." I asked, "Who are you? Why are you doing this?" She shrugged like a rejected mother. "I am what is left of you when you chose convenience. I heal with scars so you won't notice. I am the memory you forgot and the choices you rejected. I am the one who made up her mind." She returned to the mirror and pointed to a small door. "Open it," she said. "There are things you lost, and there is one way to change." I felt something alive swaying inside me. Not fear or curiosity, but weary acceptance. I knew that if I went through the door, I would split myself in two forever. One part would stay here, in my familiar life, and the other would go to a place where everything would be different. It was a choice, not between good and evil, but between life and the miracle I could no longer speak of aloud. I couldn't decide. And then she smiled too broadly and said, "You always thought you could turn back time. But sometimes it doesn't come back. Sometimes it stays here, and someone else comes out instead." I touched the doorknob. A chill ran through my skin. Not quite cold, more like a feeling of separation. I took a step. Behind the door was a corridor with 1,000,000 doors. Each one led to a different version of my life. My name was written on each door, but in different ways, sometimes in gloomy calligraphy, sometimes in childish scribbles. I realized that behind each door was me, but not alone. Suddenly, I heard sounds from my apartment. Sounds that had always been on the other side of the glass before. Laughter, the clinking of a coffee cup, an old melody on the record player. Someone was happy where I lived, and suddenly it became clear. Someone was already living my life the way I was supposed to live it. She bowed her head and hissed, "Look closely. Sometimes the copy likes to live better than the original. Sometimes the copy wears what the original didn't bother to wear. And that's okay. We are an exchange, Anna. Someone has to be the price." I thought about my parents, about work, about the little conversations that ended because of me. I thought about the secret I had abandoned, and which was now, perhaps, hiding behind one of the doors. I thought about how often I woke up to a scream, and the scream was someone else's reflected fear. I got lost in the hallway, going from door to door. What opened up was something I never had. A room filled with handwritten confessions. Another with photographs of me standing next to people I don't remember. Another with an empty chair and the smell of fresh bread. Everywhere were traces of my life, but twisted and intertwined like a monstrous tangle. Finally, I found a door with a single word written on it: original. I thought that behind it would be the truth, that there I would find the answer, whether I had ever been whole. I pushed it open. The room was empty. Only one large mirror stood in the middle of it, without a frame, without a reflection. I came closer and saw that the surface of the mirror was smudged, as if someone had left fingerprints on it, and water was running down them. The water formed letters that slowly came together to spell out a phrase. "You are no longer the same." I smiled, and at that very moment, I heard laughter behind me. Not evil, not kind. It was calm, like a decision. I turned around. There she was, the one who had stayed in my apartment, who had taken my life, my work, my habits. She was holding a small card in her hand, the one I found in the mailbox. She said, "Thank you." I stepped back, and the mirror behind me no longer reflected anything. I reached out my hand. The glass was hard and unresponsive. I realized that I had taken a step and missed something. And then a realization flashed through my mind. Not a word, but an image. Someone else, in another version, woke up with my name on their lips and didn't know why their life was so empty. Someone had taken my place to find out what it meant to be me. I tried to scream, my voice, thin and strange, stuck in my throat in the hallway. I realized that deceptive logic had overwhelmed me. If one part of me had gone there, someone else must have stayed here. And I, or what was left of me, was now standing in a room without a mirror, listening to my former life flowing behind the wall. I don't know how much time passed. I only knew one thing. At some point, I heard footsteps, familiar footsteps that I took a step back. The floor beneath me was as empty as paper. I remembered hearing my mother say once when I was a child, "Sometimes children go into mirrors to become who they want to be." At the time, it sounded like a fairy tale. Now, it seemed like an instruction. She smiled, and in her smile there was both regret and surprise, like a person who had found a lost object and suddenly realized its value. "Go home," she said. "Your apartment misses you." I looked back at the mirror, at the door, at the hallway, and realized I had no choice. Somewhere in the labyrinth of glass, a part of me remained, a part that would learn to live in a new way, and someone else would now learn to live mine. It was the price the mirrors demanded, an exchange so that both worlds would remain in balance. I closed my eyes and whispered the phrase I could no longer keep to myself. If that's the price, so be it. When I opened my eyes again, the world around me was familiar. My books on the shelf, the lamp on the nightstand, a photograph with a friend who had long since left. But there was something else in the room. A thin crack on the pastel vase, a new scent of perfume that hadn't been there before. She went out into the hallway and quietly closed the door behind her. I heard the lock click, and suddenly, a sound I knew by heart. At exactly 3:13 a.m., a knocking sound came from somewhere in the closet. I walked over to the mirror. The reflection was empty, but when I got closer, I saw that someone had left a mark on the other side of the glass, a small handprint, like a child's. The print was moving. It stretched upward, as if someone inside was trying to get out. I don't know who lives in my life now. I don't know who stayed on the other side. But I know one thing. In a world where mirrors can exchange lives, we always pay for our dreams. And sometimes what comes back to us is no longer quite us. If you look in your mirror now and see someone smiling a little differently, don't rush to look away. Remember, sometimes a copy comes back for what it forgot. And sometimes it stays where you thought you were staying.